Welcome to Gemini season. If it has felt like the last basically half of this year has been a series of thwarted plans or revised manuscripts, conversations that felt like they had to be ran 3 or 4 times, that makes sense. There has been a lot going on with a lot of different things, astrologically, politically, personally, everything, right? So Gemini season, if I can be so bold to say, looks like the turning point where we get a reprieve. We acknowledge that there's been a lot of pain, a lot of strife, but now there is a turning of the tides in many different ways. And it may be best to speak about these transits coming up in a neutral way because it's a mixed bag. A mixed bag of lots of extremes that could show up in our lives, our personal lives, in a neutral or balanced way. So I want to be careful with that when I give my interpretations. When I think of Gemini season, I think about the saying, "It is not flaky to change your mind," which is a saying lots of people have said, but I've heard it from Michelle Pelzon Lipsitz, an incredible wise teacher in our times, talking about how, or she often talks about how changing your mind is responding to new information. And I think that is one of the things in our culture that we fear so much. And possibly the reason we talk about the zodiac sign of Gemini as two-faced, or they shift moods really quickly. I think that's a response to our cultural fear of mental change. So in this season, this month-long moment that the sun is in the zodiac sign of Gemini, I feel like we're called to examine why there is such a great fear of mental shifting. And then, if we want to go further, allow ourselves to change and shift with new information. Allow ourselves to receive new information. Allow ourselves to maybe approach a friend or a colleague that is going to give you something that may change your mind, and be open to that. So that's what's on my mind, is who can I talk with this month to help me lean more into my flow and what will allow me to grow, what will allow me to change, shift, and grow if I did not talk to that person, as if I didn't talk to that person. Another thing I think about with Gemini season is using our hands. I wonder if Jupiter's presence in the sign of Gemini for basically a whole year. I'm gonna go back a little bit. So what I've noticed amongst friends and culturally is in our discourse, we're talking about crafting, gardening, sewing, knitting, things that use our hands that we can't speed up, and we don't want to speed up because the process, Gemini words of process, practice, movement, using our hands is the magic of it, is the magic of these crafts, these creations. So I'm wondering if Jupiter's presence in Gemini has a lot to do with that, the expansion of this presence of hand making by hand, cooking, baking, that kind of thing in our culture. I would love to hear in the comments if you've noticed that as well, or if that's just my age bracket, mid-30s is when we begin, everyone's knitting, everyone is hand sewing garments, stuff like that. Let me know, because I can only notice what I notice, right? Here's my noticing. So thinking about Gemini season when the sun is in Gemini, maybe this is a period, a 30-day period where we use our hands. That Gemini rules the hands. All of those double-bodied signs, Gemini, Virgo, Pisces, Sagittarius, has a lot to do with the parts of our body where there's two of them. And specifically Gemini is for hands. So thinking about how we use our hands, how our hands gather things, gather information, how we tend to things with our hands. That's something to incorporate into the Gemini season for yourself. And then lastly, I was thinking about how Gemini, all of the double-bodied signs also have a lot to do with digestion. I'm not going to go into the deep dive on that, but I was thinking about mental digestion, the air sign, mutable sign, Gemini, confusion, mental exhaustion, brain fog, tripping up on words. That is usually a sign of there's too much in there, in the mind, and it has not been fully digested or integrated yet. So in this season, if you're sensing like, oh, there's just like too much going on, there's too much brain fog, you can't quite get ahead of your mind, this may be a really, really good season to focus on integration. And that could look like a million things, which is something I say all the time. It's a very personal practice to decide how you want to digest your mental information. That personally looks like journaling for me. Actively digesting, actively working through the thoughts that are like running around in my head with my hand, actually, is like one of the most fruitful ways for me to feel like I have my center again. It could look like knitting. It really could look like knitting is how you mentally digest. It could be conversing with someone else and like figuring stuff out live with another person. Dialogue is one amazing way to integrate mental information. It could be making boundaries around what you digest or what you ingest, I guess, consume mentally. So maybe it's you take after 5 p.m. every day, you don't look at the internet or your phone, or you don't even watch TV, like something like that, to help you digest. This is the season where mental overwhelm or brain fog would be more present than other seasons as well, because the sun is there. And what the sun does is the sun lends light or consciousness or attention to a part of our charts or a part of the sky. And collectively, that energy is Gemini, basically everything I've been saying. And then in your chart, which I'll get into for every rising sign, in your chart, that sun, our sun, is shining their light on like one area of our life. And it's pretty typical that all areas of the life, I'm going to back up. Wherever the sun is shining, no matter whose chart it is, the Gemini energy will be increasing mental energy as well. And that can be like, if we're thinking about the first house is about the self, the life, the desire, the impetus. So that energy would be more mental in your whole life, but more particularly in Gemini season, there's a more mental emphasis on your personhood. Okay, so that's my intro to Gemini season. I will be going through every single rising sign. For this video, it'll just be one element's rising sign. And yeah, let's jump in. Okay, before we jump in though, I forgot about this. There's like a bajillion things that are happening in this Gemini season, but there are 3 like major things, transits. The first is basically right when Gemini season begins, Saturn moves into Aries. Saturn hasn't been in Aries since the 1990s. So it's been a while since we've felt that energy. And some of us haven't even felt that energy in our lifetime yet. So I'll talk about this specifically for everyone's rising sign chart. But in general, Saturn in Aries we're shifting from Saturn and Pisces. We're past 2.5 years. Saturn, the planet of karma, limitations, lessons, boundaries, discipline, has been in the sign of like Pisces boundarylessness, compassion, fluidness. And there's so much to say about this. And I'm not doing like a whole video just on Saturn, Pisces, and Saturn, and Aries, and maybe I will. Well, what I'm seeing or what I'm sensing is that the past 2.5 years, there's been a lot of energy toward leaning into like wisdom teachers or developing one's own intuitive skills. And this has been pretty widely experienced compared to other generations. I think also because Neptune has been in Pisces, the sign of Pisces, for a while. I think like 12 years. So I think Saturn is asking us, or has been asking us, to lean into the lessons of developing our own psychic abilities, our own intuitive abilities, listening to the collective more closely, but also like dissolving boundaries between ourselves. This is like all very much vague language because I want to start talking about Saturn in Aries, where that the difference between Pisces and Aries is vast. I think between, speaking of any zodiac sign next to another, I think Pisces and Aries energy really is so differently experienced as humans compared to other signs possibly. I see Saturn and Aries asking us to develop our own selves. That's the Aries energy, like selfhood, initiative, leadership, our own agency, in not relying necessarily on the wisdom teachers or on listening to the collective. It's more about listening to our own chest, like speaking from the chest and learning those lessons of you are who you are, and your separateness, your individual separateness is like the most fruitful garden. And that's probably a really positive way to think about Saturn, a planet of limitations, in Aries, a really flagrant, fiery, loud, like zesty kind of energy. There are a lot of discussions on how Saturn in Aries has shown up on the global sphere in the past and how that looked like in conflicts. It often coincides with a great war or political strife. But thinking about this for our own personal energies, I think I see Saturn in Aries as the invitation to speak up, to be our own advocates, and not to rely on political parties possibly that won't be advocating for you, even if they say they will. That's a little bit of my own editorial there. So that's what I'm seeing for that. Then one of the other 3 transits for Gemini season that I'm seeing is significant is the Mercury Cazimi in Gemini on May 29th. So a Cazimi is when a planet joins the sun at the exact same degree, and Cazimi literally means, or translated means, in the heart of. So when Mercury is in the heart of the sun, it's this like day or two-ish long, like intense clarity. It could look like a beginning to a new season, especially when it comes to like your mental energy. I think because this is occurring in the sign of Gemini as well, there's a double emphasis on mental energy. So Mercury and Gemini. It could look like you get a really great idea that like is the beginning of a new chapter for you. So this Mercury Cazimi, it can show up in many different ways. It could look like a really important conversation happens that day. It looks positive in that it's inspiring, and possibly inspiring to change something. Doesn't have to change something, but that's the exciting thing of a Mercury Cazimi in this season. The 3rd transit is something that we've all been looking forward to for a while. This is Jupiter in Cancer. Jupiter has been in Gemini for about a year at this point, and he's moving into Cancer June 8th, and he'll be there for about a year. Jupiter loves being in Cancer. Loves being in Cancer. Jupiter is at home in Pisces and Sagittarius, but Jupiter exalts in Cancer. And this can look like so many things. This can look like the collective is finally taking care of something, or everyone. Thinking about the Cancer energy of care and intentional support. Jupiter has not been that happy in Gemini. Gemini is technically a sign where Jupiter falls, doesn't feel as supported. So there'll be that great shift June 8th for a year from Jupiter not feeling great like in the sign to feeling the best Jupiter can feel in any sign. But there's a caution here, is that we put a lot of hope into this transit. We put so much energy, we're hoping that Jupiter in Cancer is a cure to all of ailments happening right now. And there has been so much violence and strife and loss and diminishment of care systems in our culture. So we need to be careful not to say, okay, well, Jupiter in Cancer is going to fix it. That may be true. There may be some really great developments where Jupiter is now in a place to make meaning-making systems amongst different people so that more people have support and feel nourished in this world. This may be true, but we also need to put our action behind that. We can't just wait for these nebulous threads that Jupiter in Cancer promises to occur, right? So that's another thing is about Cancer energy, as well as Cancer is active love. Love is only powerful when it is acted upon. You can say day and night that you love something or someone or some place, but it's not until you put your action toward that the love is felt. So that's another thing I've been thinking about for Jupiter in Cancer. Okay, now we're ready to jump into the rising sign horoscopes for Gemini season. Hi, Earth rising signs. Gemini season is in one of your business houses. So it's either for Taurus in your house of income, skills, talents, what you surround yourself with physically in order to feel more secure in this world, which relates to income. And then Virgo risings, your Gemini house is the 10th house of effort, career, occupation, how you show up in the world. It usually relates to money in your life as well. And then Capricorn risings, Gemini is your 6th house. So that's how you do your work or how you daily set up your life for business and success, stuff like that. It's also related to your daily routines in health as well. So how money and the body are really connected in abundance. So all of you Earth sign risings, Gemini season is a really great season to bring your conscious mind toward how you bring in abundance in your life or how you show up in the world as someone who has specific skills, talents, and desires and can be made useful for the collective. If that's how we want to boil down our career experience in our human lives, is how do we make ourselves useful and supportive to all of the beings on this planet, not just humans, right? Okay. And then I'll also be, for each rising sign, I'll be touching on Jupiter moving into Cancer on June 9th, and then Saturn moving into Aries in a couple of days on May 24th, as well as the Mercury Cazimi on May 29th. So we'll start with Taurus risings. Okay, so Gemini season is when your conscious mind, the sun, illuminates the part of your life that has a lot to do with how language is so important to how you conceive of and how you receive money. As a Taurus rising, Venus is your chart ruler. So receiving and attracting and being valuable and valuing others is really, really key to your experience in this lifetime. So pulling that information into the second house being ruled by Gemini, ruled by Mercury then, the planet that rules Gemini is Mercury. I'm seeing that the way that you value things or beings or experiences or places or how you feel valued yourself has a lot to do with language. So this is a really good month to think about what kind of language do you use when you talk about yourself? What kind of language do you use when you talk about yourself alone versus around other people? And what kind of language do you use to value other people or experiences or things outside of your own life? And this can be maybe I would say it's like it's an important task this month if we want to talk about tasks, which is not really fun, but it's an important task to be as mindful and careful as you can with how you speak or think about something, because that directly relates to the abundance you experience in this world. So think about that. We'll talk about Saturn moving into Aries into your 12th house. So Saturn has been in your 11th house of network support systems, friendships, possibly social media, ways that other people can find you in like the wide world. So there may have been experiences of Saturn limiting those experiences or making it a little harder for you to make connections outside of your immediate environment. But by the end of this transit, my hope for you, and I'd like to hear in the comments if this actually happened, is that you have found your people in a more specific way, or you've found the people that support you and the people you want to support yourself that feels more authentic to who you are in this world. So that's what's been happening. Saturn moving into Aries, which is your 12th house, may look like lessons in kind of similar to what I said about Gemini season, is lessons in how you think about something or how you see something or what you notice ripples throughout your experience. So, for example, the more you point out a judgment of someone else's behaviors, the more you feel judged by your own subconscious mind on how you behave. So this 2.5-year-ish experience with Saturn and Aries going through your 12th house could be giving you smaller, maybe medium-sized lessons in practicing being integrating how you think about something or how you judge something and how you act, and being kinder to yourself. The more you soften, the more you offer yourself compassion, especially on the deeper level, especially in like the quieter parts of your life that you don't necessarily show other people, the greater you will feel more joyful and peaceful and aligned in your conscious life. So that's something to think about with Aries energy. I wonder if this will show up in the type of people you idealize or you consider the type of people that you want to follow or be like. So thinking about Aries as like our leaders or someone who's like the champion, the hero. This could be a moment where like heroes fall from your grace, or you may not appreciate how people you have really looked up to in your life are acting. And then in those moments, you can take that as great disappointment in that dynamic, or it can become a lesson of, okay, then I must be my own hero. I must be my own leader, or I must seek leadership in a way that is more spiritually, emotionally, or subconsciously trustworthy or satisfying. So that's a lot of maybe loose ways to talk about this, but I'm curious how it will show up in your life, because the 12th house is a really difficult house to perceive, because it's kind of like where everything dissolves, everything becomes one. It's the house of loss of ego, dissolution of ego. So it's a little more difficult to talk about. And Saturn being in the 12th house, Saturn, the planet of boundaries or limitations or edges, it's a little bit contradictory. Yeah, so your experience is personal with this planet being in your 12th house, and it will show up different for every single person. Okay, so moving on to Jupiter moving into Cancer in your 3rd house. So Jupiter will be in Cancer for 1 year. I wonder if this planet of meaning making, blessing, nurturance, nutrition, will look like finding a weekly system that feels really supportive of your dreams and your goals. So the 3rd house is kind of like it's like a grab. I think someone calls it the grab bag house, where it's like transportation, siblings, aunts and uncles, your neighborhood, your butcher, your postman. Like, it's a lot of different ideas. It's your primary education, it's your language, it's your computation, it's your cognition. Jupiter in this house, I would expect it to look like things are just starting to make sense and they aren't necessarily fighting against one another. So how you set up your Mondays and your Fridays and your Wednesdays, like how you set up your week, may feel just more harmonious for a year. And what you may experience or learn is that the more you lean into hope or systems of meaning making in these areas of life, cognition, siblings, neighborhood, the more the rest of your life will fall into place, because that is nurturing and supportive, essentially. So thinking about how starting in your weekly life before thinking about maybe something that you're planning for 5 years from now, like starting there, and then that 5-year plan will be more easeful. Okay, and the last thing I want to talk about with Taurus rising is the Mercury Cazimi in Gemini. So Gemini is the season that we're talking about, the income house. I expect May 29th, the Mercury Cazimi, when Mercury and the Sun are at the exact same degree, to experience a great clarity on what skill and talent you offer this world that is the most valuable, that very few people can offer in the same way or with the same impact that you can. So May 29th may be a really good day to lean in, to journal, to talk with a friend, to ask for advice on like, what do you see my value in this world? And then see that person you appreciate or admire mirror back to you what that is, and then write it down and make it into an intention for greater abundance in your life. Okay, Virgo rising. So Gemini season for you is the 10th house. This is the season, the month-long moment where the sun is shining, illuminating on how other people see you. In which ways are you most visible? In which ways are your efforts, your occupation, your career, your self's power in this world perceived? And this could be felt perception, or it could be like a different reality that other people are seeing that you're not necessarily seeing for yourself. So this is a really great month to focus on, like, how do I show up in the world? Am I showing up as my best? How much pressure do I put on myself to show up a certain way? And how can I lean into showing up in a way that isn't so pressurized and is more aligned with your heart energy, your body's energy? How does your body feel being perceived? And maybe this is a really good month to practice of being more visible in a way that is more connected to your long-term goals in this world. This could be a really good month to consider that your energy in your private spaces possibly is very different from your external energy, or how you present yourself externally, and contemplating if that feels good or not. And maybe you want your private self, your energy inside or in amongst your closest people, to feel very different on purpose. But allowing the conscious mind to make that decision rather than your unconscious self to have decided that for you could be a really good focus this month. Saturn in Aries. moves into your 8th house. So Saturn has been in your 7th house for about 2.5 years. Saturn in the 7th house can look like authenticating your closest relationships, making sure you're in the right relationships, making sure your great relationships are longer lasting because you've put in really, really good work. So the shift from 7th house energy to 8th house energy could feel more like you're going deeper with those relationships that you've really tended to and learned really great lessons with. So 8th house in Aries, Saturn in that, to me, says you are exploring intimacy, the risk that you take when you share your most tender, private energies. If you're an artist, this could look like a 2.5-year period of really practicing hard. I'm going to back up a little bit. For creative people, the 8th house is more of that like gut creative energy rather than maybe mental creative energy. So it's like you never really know what's going to come out, but you're pulling from the groin, you're pulling from the sacral, and it's like maybe a little gruesome, maybe a little bloody, maybe a little weird. But in the end, it's like so satisfying to see what was deep, 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 deep down inside of you come out for you to witness outside of you. So Saturn in the 8th house as an artist, it looks like really creating containers or boundaries or practices or pathways for that deep, dark inner energy to come out and express it. And that could be really, really uncomfortable for the first few months of Saturn in Aries. But by the end of that transit, it's like I can almost promise you that your artistic, your creative practice will be accelerated. And I'm not saying that in the girl boss way, but accelerated in that you have greater access to like those truly human, grotesque psychological parts of ourselves that don't often come out. And translating that, the creative energy, to one-on-one relationships or deeply intimate relationships is that it may feel gnarly to rely on someone else in a certain way, but the boon or the power of trading back and forth who is in control sexually, verbally, financially, that kind of thing, can illuminate parts of a human experience that you haven't felt before, or that it really requires like lots of surrender to experience. So yeah, that I'm excited for you, mostly because I like those kind of experiences, and I know that they lead to a richer existence. So do not fear Saturn in your 8th house. Do not fear it. Cancer moving into, Jupiter moving into Cancer on June 9th into your 11th house. It looks like a year of great support from the people in your sphere. This could be people you will never meet in person, but you interact with online. It could be people that are part of a specific group that you're a part of. Jupiter is helping you make sense of your life and granting more meaning to parts of your life. So Jupiter is now moving into that house of like how you are part of a whole, of a movement, of a of like-minded people, and it feels like a great blessing to experience more care and support in that way. And then the last thing I want to talk about is Mercury in Gemini. We talked a lot about Gemini energy for the season. So Mercury Cazimi on May 29th could look like really great clarity on how you show up in the world. It could look like someone mirrors back to you how you show up in this world. Very, like, specifically, like, through a very quick email, they say, I love that you do this. Keep doing it. Go you. Like, something like that, I would expect. Yeah. So let me know in the comments how things are shaping up for you. I'm curious how this Mercury Cazimi is going to show up. Lastly, Capricorn rising. Your Gemini season is asking you to grant conscious energy, focus attention to what you do daily that supports everything else in your life. So it's like what you do every day ripples out to, wait, I'm going to back up. There's that adage, how you do one thing is how you do everything. So that's a kind of like sixth house energy to me. It's like how you brush your teeth is how you answer your emails, is how you go to the gym, is how you make your breakfast. Like the amount of care and attention you give the smallest thing in your life is energetically similar to how you give care and attention to the largest thing in your life. And that is not to say that you should be brushing your teeth for an hour straight and like repeating a mantra over and over and over for that hour. Like that's excessive, which is another lesson. Is like if you excessively treat the smallest things in your life with attention, then the things that are very large in your life may be overwhelming with like perfectionistic energy, or there is such a thing as too much intention for something. So this is what the sun in the sixth house is asking you to think about, or to practice. Practice is a very sixth house word. So it's giving yourself more love, compassion, ease, joy will make everything else you do every day more joyful and loving, right? Okay. So Aries and Saturn, or Saturn and Aries in your fourth house. Saturn has been in Pisces in your third house for a while, and that could look like limitations or isolation, or maybe a little not confusion. It's more like limits on how you use language, how you write, how you read, your neighborhood, your relationships in your immediate surroundings. So maybe you felt a little bit separated from your culture or your social circles in the past couple of years, possibly. But Saturn's moving into your fourth house. So Saturn's asking you in your fourth house, your most private places, to be more discerning and caring maybe, but careful with who you let into your private places. This may be a really great couple of years to practice protections. And protections is a concept that could be transferred to a lot of things in more like metaphysical meaning-making systems. Protections is understanding that the more hygienic your soul, your mind, your digital experience, your living space is, the greater sense of security and safety you have in the world, so that you are more likely to thrive and grow in the ways that you want to grow. So for 2.5 years, practice who you let into your spaces and why and how, and understand that your boundaries allow for greater allow for thriving. I think I'll leave it there, because that was pretty well said, if I could say myself. I'm also Capricorn rising, so I've thought about this a lot. Okay, so then Jupiter moving into Cancer is your seventh house of relationships. This can look like your current bonded relationships having more ease, being more seamlessly integrated into all parts of your life. It can look like difficulties that you've had in bonded relationships are now being like maybe smoothed over is probably too hopeful of a term, but understood better. And you may be giving more grace, or be given more grace in your bonded relationships, because people understand the value in tended to, gardened, developed relationships, and are more willing to allow for like gnarlier energy. And like maybe you're a moody person, in the past your moods have caused a lot of difficulty in a bonded relationship, but now with Jupiter being there, there's more of this like peace, awareness that your experience on this earth is very complex. And so your bonded partner, best friend, marriage, that person also understands that like they are complex as well. And then the complex energy coming together. Let's just say it really simply. It's more seamless. It's more harmonious when you come together and you share your intricate quilted experiences on this planet. Okay. And then the Cazimi on May 29th, the Mercury Cazimi in Gemini, I expect May 29th to look like just a really good day of like getting things done and not feeling so hard. And like maybe you realize there were like 50 things on your to-do list and you really only have to do one of them, and the rest of them really are just extra. And like that one thing you chose to do knocked all of the purposes out, so you don't have to do anything else, and you can maybe have an easier, more restful day because your mind is just like on, right? Okay, so that is for Earth sign risings. I really hope that you have a great month, season, Gemini season, in your career, in your abundance, in the way that you feel about your utility, your care, your effort in this world. Okay, love you.